Hey, morning, everybody. We have been in a series called The Not So Superheroes. We went through Moses. We spent 3 weeks in Moses about how God uses us and does something great within us, even when we are flawed individuals. And sometimes God will work within you, even when you choose to not necessarily follow what he wants you to do. Which led us to week 1 of Samson, and now we're in part 2. I promised myself I would only spend 2 weeks in Samson. This is my favorite story to read ever because I'm still immature as a boy in my head. It was a great story of strength, right? Of unabashed, like, I don't care who you are, I am Samson. However, that also is his biggest downfall too, as well. We're going to spend the whole sermon in 2 Samuel chapter 16. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm delirious. In Judges 16, it sounded not right because in my head I want to talk about David. 2 different people. Today we're talking about the fall and the rise of Samson. And this is the story that you know about Samson because this is about Samson and Delilah and this whole falling out, but yet being restored at the end to do the will of God. I want you to think about something as we get into this story today. We just ended last week with Samson doing the most ridiculous act of revenge you've ever heard of. One, the Philistines are just savages, right? They got upset at what Samson did, so they ended up killing Samson's wife that was given away to one of his companions at this whole feast that he was having to get married to a Philistine, which in itself sounds crazy. And they not only killed her, but her whole family. Burned their house down with them. And so he gets angry. You know what he does? Anybody? Do you remember last week? It's ridiculous. None of us would do it. He gathers up a ton of foxes, ties their tails together, and sends them through their field and lights everything on fire. As a kid, I'm like, that is the coolest thing I ever heard. I mean, who does this stuff? What kind of prank is this? Who has the time to gather that many foxes? And why are there so many foxes around? And why would they let you light their tails? It's just crazy. So the Philistines get angry. We ended with Samson was a judge, and he judged over there for 20 years. Samson's biggest issue, I can't think of one. We talked about last week, was pride, lust, and anger. The very next chapter, after he reigns for 20 years as a judge over the Israelites, starts in a way that you can tell his relationship with God is really not there anymore. And you say, well, how do you know? Well, the very first verse is this. One day Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute, and he went to spend the night with her. Samson goes with avenging the death of a woman that he was already told by his parents he probably shouldn't marry this one. But he did it anyways, and it came with him always feeling like he was smarter than everybody else, that he could always get out of something. So he gives this crazy bet that I'm going to tell you a riddle and you have to give me the answer. And if you don't, you guys have to give me a bunch of clothes. And if you do, I'll give you a bunch of clothing. Well, they pressured his soon-to-be wife into telling the answer because she kept nagging Samson. This is his downfall over and over again. So he finally gives in and tells on him what the answer is. And so his payback to them is to go and kill 30 men and take all their clothes and give it to them. This is how Samson works. Anger, lust, impulse. You know what's really interesting is that all of Samson's gifts that came from God were not because of anything that Samson did. Before Samson was born, there was a promise of his mom. She wasn't really able to have children. God said, yeah, we'll make this happen, but he's going to be a Levite. Nothing's going to touch his head. He will be dedicated from the womb until he dies to God. And I'm looking at the life of Samson, and I don't know how much of it is really dedicated to God. It seems like so much of it is dedicated to himself. And this is why we're talking about not so superheroes. Because every one of us in here should be able to look at ourselves and know that you are blessed more than you ever know. And you take a lot of it for granted, and more likely than not, you use it for your own gain and not to give glory to God. And that's not saying anything about you, because I have to point that finger directly back at myself too. As people, we have some weird innate feeling that we are more important than we really are. But Samson, in this case, he had all these things that kind of came out. So we use the line, or we're talking about superheroes, and we use the line from Spider-Man, from Uncle Ben, that with great power comes great. He has all the great power, but he doesn't show restraint in the responsibility that he uses it. So the first thing he does after this crazy ordeal is to go and sleep with a prostitute. It doesn't sound like the most godly thing to do. However, all the people gather around and say, Samson's here. So they surround the place and they lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, at dawn we will kill him. And Samson always has this feeling, right? I'm smarter than everybody, I'm stronger than everybody, I'll do what I need to do. And to be honest, he kind of gets away with a lot. And we're going to read this, but this is us. So every time we talk about Samson and I make him look a little bad, just know that I'm talking about us. Because how often do we get away with things? Because we do our own, right? We say, okay, I did something really wrong, but I'm going to cover it up, or I'm going to do something so it deflects all of the blame on me, and I'm going to push it to other people, and they're not even going to know that I did anything wrong, and I get away with it. And then I'll move on. This is what hurt me as a student. As a student, I got away with murder because I was like, you know what? Hey, I know I should really study for this test. Really should. I don't think I'm going to. And you know what happened to me? I got a good grade. And it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I didn't study for a test, and I got an 8. I was like, I never have to study again. God has blessed me with the brain of a genius. Guess what happened on the very next test? I didn't even get 50% on the very next test. I think I was just lucky at guessing the one day I should have really studied. And the next day, or the next time I had a test, I was like, I didn't have to study. I'm going to go do something else. I think I'm going to go to the beach today. I went to Pepperdine. There's a nice beach across the street. And I failed. And what we think is, I can just keep doing what makes it work for me. I could just do enough to just stay in my own way and be like, I'm good. Because I know that I am Samson in this case, and I am stronger, and I think I'm more crafty, and I can just get away with it. And sometimes it works out. So Samson lay there for only till the middle of the night. Then he got up and he took hold of the doors of the city gate. This is how ridiculous Samson is. Together with the 2 posts, and he tore them loose, bar and all, and he lifted them on his shoulders, and he carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Sometime later, he fell in love with the so one, they wanted to trap him. He takes their trap, rips it apart. They can't do anything about it. And I know they have to go, rats, that's Samson. We'll get you on the next time. That's what every, evil person wants to do, the superhero. You got away with it this time, but next time we'll get you for sure. I don't know what that cartoon that's from, but that sounds like a direct quote of my Rolodex of cartoon quotes. His continual issue is he falls in love with people he shouldn't fall in love with. He sleeps with people he shouldn't sleep with, and then he gets impulsive and angry, and he lashes out. I don't know if this sounds like you. Maybe yours isn't a lustful thing, but let's take a lust of women or men and change it to something else. Maybe yours is like lying to people, or maybe it's, not giving your best, or maybe it's gossiping or whatever. Yet you keep falling in love with something that you know is going to hurt you, but you find pleasure in it. Some people live life to be in chaos, so they seek out chaotic environments to be in because it gives them peace, even though it's crazy. And it's not good for them, but they find themselves in it all the time. This is how we relate to the Samson, right? This is your Samson moment. So think about this. So later he falls in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, see if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so that we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver. You know it's bad when your enemies know that you have a weakness. For Superman, it was like, how can we find a way to get someone to give him some kryptonite? We'll trick him, and we'll go, especially with people he trusts. We can just get to him. They know that he has a woman issue. So they go directly to her and say, here's the deal. We're going to pay you a lot. Give us just enough to be able to take this guy out. I don't know about you, but it sounds like Samson fell in love with someone who doesn't really fall in love with him. Can you relate? I don't know. So Delilah said to Samson, and I can only imagine this is in the most seductive way. Tell me your secrets of your great strength. I don't know why. I don't know how this conversation starts. If your spouse ever tells you, tell me how I can tie you up, there's a number to call, and you should run away. Or, I don't want to know what you do in your married homes. Leave me out. Let me know how you can be tied up and seduced. So Samson answered, if anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I can become as weak as any other man. Samson lies to everyone. Sometimes it benefits him. Sometimes he just does it to do it. In the chapter before, when he kills the lion and rips it open, and then the next time he comes back, he doesn't tell his parents. The next time he comes back later, and there's like bees making honey out of this carcass of a lion, which is just crazy in itself. He goes through all of this and doesn't tell anybody because he wants to use these secrets against people. Or he just omits that they happen. So he tells another lie. This is how you get me. So the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she tied them with them. With men hidden in the room, she called, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. But he snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Okay, should this be enough for you to not trust somebody?
Yes. Yep.
If your heart is not really right and you're driven by different organs, you will do things that aren't the smartest things to do. Because he loved this woman, and whenever I hear that Samson loves a woman, it has nothing to do with the woman's character, personality. It doesn't have anything to do with, does she have the characteristics of a godly woman? Proverbs wasn't written yet. Everything that he shows is, I went down, like his first wife, I went down and saw that there was this beautiful woman, and I told my parents, you need to make this happen. I want to marry her because she's beautiful. I'm sure Delilah was a very attractive woman. So far, she's tried to kill him once. Some people like chaotic environments. I think he was like, I don't know. That was like the greatest moment of our marriage. I just killed a bunch of guys that tried to kill me because you told them something about me. So then Delilah says to Samson, you've made a fool of me. Listen to these words. You made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now. Tell me how you can be tied. Do you hear this, people? If you're in a relationship and someone hurts you and they say, I'm sorry, I love you, they don't mean it. It's okay to get help. Don't fall into this trap. It's funny, but it's not. Because we do this. Maybe not as obvious as this, but we do this sometimes. Hey, it doesn't just happen in married relationships. It happens in friendships. It happens with families. If there's people in your life that continually hurt you and they tell you the lies of saying, hey, it's your fault that I failed at hurting you. Teach me how to hurt you again. Please, don't. Because it happens a lot. But at the same time, don't be dumb enough to keep giving them the information and drawing along. So he goes along with it. If anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as the other man. She's equally as not bright in this situation. I'm going to tie you up, I'm going to hurt you because I want something for me. And he says, I'm going to lie to you and I'm going to show you that you can't hurt me because I like how this makes me feel. This doesn't sound like any healthy relationship. Married couples, If you ever do something that is just for you over and over again and you forget how important the us is in your relationship, you need to rediscover how important the us is for you. It can lead you to do some things that you will regret later. So Delilah took some new ropes and tied them up. Then, men hidden in the room, they are really crafty, these men. He's like, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And he snaps the ropes like it was just threads. Look what she says. Delilah then says, all this time you have been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you could be tied. I don't know how bright he is. It doesn't say anything about Samson's smarts. It always talks about his strength. But he has a woman who's tried to kill him now twice, or at least get him captured. And he knows that she's the one that's doing it, because he's only told her. Nothing hurts more than when people who are close to you betray you. And he knows now that she's betrayed him twice. But we know something about Samson also. He has a very hard time being nagged by women. I say nag. I don't know if that's even the appropriate term, but it kind of said that in the chapter before. He doesn't like when they keep questioning him and talking about him. He just gets so lacks the patience or the self-control that he just gives in. Not yet. Almost. If you weave the 7 braids of my hair into a fabric on the loom and tighten it with a pin, I'll become as weak as any other man. So while he must be the deepest sleeper. While he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids on his head and wove them into a fabric. Meanwhile, there's guys coming in the room hiding. He's a deep sleeper. I think when you're that strong, you just sleep well and you don't worry about things. Anyways, then she tightened it with a pin. Again, she called out, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And he woke up in his sleep. He pulled the pin, the loom, with the fabric. And nothing happens because he's strong and he takes care of business again. Number 4, how can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? Don't you see I'm trying to hurt you and you won't let me? This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me your secret to your great strength. We can't continue to put ourselves around people who push blame. Let's just put it this way. This whole relationship's messed up. All of it. Before he even meets his wife, he's sleeping with prostitutes. He doesn't even know who he is yet. Samson is just walking around, feels like he's bigger and better than everything. I'm not pushing blame on one person in this moment. We can't put ourselves in situations where we can't see God through all of the things that we want to see for ourselves. He can't see all of the things that are coming his way because all he can see is the woman that's so pretty and beautiful. And he wants her to like him. But he also knows that he can't tell about what's going to make him weak because then he's going to probably get captured and die. But over and over again, this question of who he is and his relationship to her, it gets stronger and stronger to the point where you don't even love me anymore. And nagging is the word that was used. I was right. It's biblical. With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. Parents, got children? Do not blame Samson for this. We do this. Okay, fine, just do whatever you want. Get out of here. It's not what we want to say. But in a moment of desperation, you give in and you regret every bit of it. Day and night, day and night. You don't even love me. You don't even love me. You don't even love me. You just pretend you love me. Tell me. Okay, fine. You like sleeping in bed? Sleep in bed by yourself. I'm going to my mother's house. Right? I don't know what this looked like. I don't know if there was a doghouse back then or a couch. I don't know. But she got after him to the point where he told her everything. No razors ever touched my head. Because I have been a Nazirite. I said Levi earlier. I'm a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. She waits for him to get into that big old strong man deep sleep. I don't even know how you would do this. Samson's not a young man. His hair is probably really long. They actually had braids as part of this Nazarite deal. She already had it all braided up. Maybe it's still in it. I don't know. But she saw that he had told her everything. And he sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, come back once more. He's told me everything this time. So the rulers of the Philistines return. This is the first time they actually brought silver. I don't know how trustworthy this lady is, but she must have really been convincing. After putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair. And so began to subdue him, and his strength left him. There's only so much we can do on our own. There's only so much we can do when God's covenant is continually questioned and broken. When our hearts are completely being pulled away and withdrawn from who God is, we lose sight of who God is for us all the time. I don't know if you've ever gone through the seasons in your life where you decided, maybe I need to take a break from going to church and stuff. And I don't know if you were that person or not. But if you are, you take like a week off and you're like, oh man, I shouldn't do that. I'm going to go back. And then the moment you get to like 3 or 4 or 5, you're like, I like Sundays. I'll go to brunch today. And then you start forgetting about certain things. You start using different language. Start hanging around different people. You start feeling a little distant. And then the next thing you know, you really don't know why you ever came and you don't know why you miss it. But you notice that your life isn't going the same way that you wished it would. I had a young man that I used to work with. We brought him over a lot. We cared about him. His family life was a little rough. He fell in love with a girl in high school. Got married when he was like 18, and that marriage went completely south and rough, and they stopped going to church and all that stuff, and it was a mess, and Satan was at work from the beginning, and he called me and he said, I don't know what to do, but I know that when I was active in church that I wouldn't make some of these choices that I was making. And I said, okay, so what do we do? And we kept talking, and he was at a far-off land called Reno. And every time he was there, there wasn't an opportunity he felt to choose to do the right thing. But he thought he was doing okay, because on his own, he was doing better than what he was shown the example of. So as long as I'm doing better than what I had, I'm good. But then when you start to experience that your life is turning into what you were witnessed, that you start to realize, oh no, something is missing now. And there's a lot of times that no matter how strong you think you are, no matter how smart you think you can be, no matter how good you are at making things happen for yourself, you can't do it alone. And he and I had a long, week-long conversation. It felt like every other day we would be on the phone for a while. And I said, I think sometimes you just need to come home, right? And let's start this over. And he's still going like this, right? But he knows what he needs to do. He comes back, and we're trying to get him back on track. But you can't do everything on your own. We weren't built to do everything on our own. Samson's gifts weren't even given to him because of anything great that he's done. Like, it wasn't because of him at all. And he starts to really understand that as my fall happens, I know that I'm really nothing in the scheme of things. When life is good and you're strong and you're great and everybody worships you because of how amazing you are and built like this machine, you can get whatever you want apparently without even asking for permission. Things like this happen. So strength goes away. She calls out, hey, Samson, the Philistines are on you. And he woke up from his sleep and thought, listen, I'll go out before and shake myself free. But he didn't. Listen, he did not know that the Lord had left him. Sounds like you hadn't been paying attention to a relationship. Sounds like you've been absent in this relationship for a while, that this was a one-way relationship for so much lately, that when God goes completely, you hadn't even noticed that he left. That the tenants inside of your heart were already filling it up, and you kept pushing God out and giving him the guest room, the smaller room. You can go out to that room we have outside. Okay, you're gone, but I don't even notice that you're gone. The moment we keep withdrawing from what God wants us to do, we don't even notice. And the Philistines seized him. They gouged out his eyes and they took him down to Gaza. And binding him with bronze shackles and set him grinding grain in the prison. What I know about God is this: no matter how unfaithful we are, no matter how awful we can be, no matter all the trouble that we get in, no matter how weak we become, he still has purpose and he keeps being faithful. And sometimes it takes us being at our absolute worst for us to really see who God was for us. And I hope that none of us have to get there, because I'd rather not see all of us hit rock bottom just to know that God is true and he's faithful and he's good. But God is faithful even when we aren't. So as Samson's just grinding it out in prison, lost his sight, he's weak, it says his hair on his head began to grow again after it was shaved. The covenant starts to be restored. And it doesn't have anything to do with Samson yet. But the covenant that was put in place, the promise that God had made with his mother, he doesn't go back on. And he starts to get stronger. And the rulers of the Philistines, they assembled this offer of a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to celebrate, saying, "Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands." They made this big party to gather around and poke fun at this massive man who gave them trouble all the time, to say, who's strong now? And those moments are the ones that we say, I thought I had this. I'm not strong enough. And we get to a place where we feel so low and we just ask, give me one more chance. Let me be of service to you. I don't need any of this fame. I don't need anything that comes with it. I just want to be right with you. I couldn't imagine what it must have felt like to be Samson and to have all these things go so wrong. And you start to look back because you have nothing else to look at than what you remember in your mind, because your eyes were gouged out, and you just start to reflect on the past and all the regrets that you have because God gave you so much and you kept wasting it away. And living a life of regrets helped. Can we just pause and say, thank goodness that we have grace in Jesus Christ that washes away the sins that we have, that no matter how broken and sinful we are, that he loved us enough to wash those away. This is a moment where he didn't really understand all of this grace yet. Christ hadn't come. He just knows that I'm a servant of God, and I blew it. I can imagine if it was me, I really shouldn't have lit them all on fire. And maybe I should listen to my parents and didn't go after that woman that they said you probably shouldn't. There are so many things you can look back and say, I really wish I would have just did what I knew I should have done. I really wish I should have, that Delilah, I really should have listened to those trustworthy people in my life. Maybe I shouldn't have lied so much. Maybe I shouldn't have thought I could do everything on my own. The people got around, they praised their God. Our God has delivered our enemy into our hands. The one who laid waste to our land and multiplied our slain. They're bragging that their God is bigger than the God that gave Samson his power. Not only did Samson let himself down, now he gave a name to their God, our God, the God, as a weak, insignificant God that couldn't even keep them safe. While they were in high spirits, they shouted, "Bring out Samson to entertain us." So they called Samson out of prison, and he performed for them. When they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, "Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I may lean against them." We're never too far gone where we can't continue to do something great that God has in our hearts to do. Now, unfortunately, what Samson's great at is killing things. That's a different story. We'll talk about God and his vengeance in the Old Testament at a different time. But this is a moment where God used him for one more great feat of strength. Where God used him one more time to show the strength, not of Samson, but the strength of God. And what God can do when they thought that they had won and everything was done, God shows people again that the real, true power comes from nothing other than God. The temple was crowded, men and women. The rulers and the Philistines were there. And on the roof, about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. There's a lot of people. Samson prayed to the Lord, Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just one more. And let me, with one blow, revenge the Philistines for my 2 eyes. It's still about him. It's okay. Then Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars, which the temple stood, bracing himself against it with his right hand and one with his left on the other. Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. Then he pushed with all of his might. Down came the temple and the rulers and all the people in it. Thus, he killed many more when he died than while he lived. Samson's greatest feat was dying in a blaze of glory for the Lord. Part of it sounds like it's for himself too. There's times also we would do anything to just be right with those who we've messed up. And to this point, he said, even in death, I just want to give you glory. But please also kill my enemies. I wonder what happens in our lives when we devote everything to God and we can leave ourselves second. I wonder what it looks like, and I look at the story of Samson and I say, what does it look like when we have relationships that are godly, that are committed, that lean on each other, knowing that our foundation is solid in Christ and his love and forgiveness? I wonder what it looks like when all of our talents are used, not for our own, hey, look at me, I'm this big, strong, awesome person, but it's a reflection of God. And our purpose in this world is to walk through it with the gifts and skills that God gives us, to show his glory to all the people who we may come in contact with. Not drawing anything to ourselves, but getting all the glory up to God. I wonder what it looks like when we have those moments of regret and we wish we could have changed it. And we ask God, God, I pray in total repentance that you may heal this wounded heart and I may serve you better. I wonder if that changes our mentality, our perspective. I wonder if that changes our hope in our hearts that God may be glorified. Let's go to God in prayer, and I'll have the praise team come up in a minute. And I think this should be our prayer as we move forward. God, make this heart yours. Dear Father, Lord, we love you so much, and I love looking at these stories that you have for us to learn from. They're so grand and extreme, but at the same time we can learn that nothing changes, God. Nothing changes. That there is nothing new, that all these things that happen to us in our world has happened thousands or more years ago. That pride and lust and impulse and anger and all these things, when let loose, they control us. And there's only one way to overcome them, and that is to give them to you, God, and to trust that you have the strength and the power for us to step out in faith, to know that you are God and you are good. I pray that you help us as we move forward to live our lives with that we get out of the things that keep us from you, that keep distracting us from seeing you completely, and that we move into a better space of seeing you, move towards you, to trust your faithfulness, God. I pray this all in your son's name. Amen. Praise God.